Hello and welcome. We're about to tackle a question that has kept leaders and economists up at night for almost a century. Why is it that some countries get rich while others seem to stay poor? So let's jump right in and explore the classic blueprints they came up with to try and solve this massive puzzle.
What's the secret recipe for a nation's prosperity? For decades, some of the world's brightest minds were on the hunt for a single, universal formula for growth. But as we're about to see, the path they thought was a straight line. Well, it turned out to be anything but.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll get on the same page about what development even means. Then, we'll dig into 4 classic blueprints for growth. Take a closer look at that first one. Witness the huge debate it kicked off. And finally, see why these old ideas are actually more relevant than ever.
First up, what are we even talking about when we say development? It's super tempting to think it's just about money and GDP, right? But the real picture is so much richer and more complex than that. Our source material defines it as this huge, profound transformation. It's not just about more cash in people's pockets. No, it's about reorganizing entire economic and social systems. It's about changing attitudes and institutions. And the ultimate goal of all of it is to expand human freedom. So the crucial point here is true development is really about empowering people.
Okay, so with that big goal in mind, how in the world do you get there? For a big chunk of the last century, economists and leaders were searching for a universal map, a reliable blueprint for success that would work for anyone, anywhere.
And this search led to some really powerful and often totally conflicting ideas. The classic literature on this stuff organizes these into 4 major and often competing approaches.
4. That's the number of core theories that literally shaped decades of policy, foreign aid, and global debate. Each one offered a completely different diagnosis of the problem and a completely different prescription for the cure.
And here they are. First, you've got the linear stages of growth model. Second, theories focusing on structural change. Third, the international dependence revolution. And fourth, the neoclassical counter-revolution. I know, they sound super academic, but trust me, the core ideas are surprisingly straightforward. Let's start with the first blueprint, which was also the simplest by far. Imagine development as a pretty straightforward journey, kind of like walking down a single, well-paved road.
So, back in the 1950s and 60s, there was this real optimism in the air. The thinking was pretty clear. Development isn't some big mystery, it's a process. Developed countries had already provided the map, and the idea was that all other nations just needed to follow it.
This quote from our source really just hits the nail on the head. It's this idea of a universal timeline. The belief was that every single country, no matter its unique history or culture, had to pass through the exact same stages of growth to reach modernity. So how do you move from one stage to the next? Well, according to this theory, the engine of growth was capital. If a country could save enough, invest that money productively, and maybe get a little boost from foreign aid, it could slam the accelerator and speed through the stages. It was seen as a very economic, almost mechanical process.
But, and there's always a but, isn't there? This simple, linear view didn't exactly hold up. As the decades went by, many countries just weren't progressing the way the theory predicted. This sparked a huge debate that shifted the focus from a country's internal savings to its role in the wider world.
So the new question became this. Is the global economic system a ladder that helps poor countries climb up, or is it actually a trap that's designed to keep them down? This question split thinkers into 2 radically opposed camps.
And this created 2 warring camps. On one side, you have the international dependence theorists. They argued the entire global system was fundamentally rigged, designed by wealthy nations to extract resources and labor from poorer ones, locking them in a state of dependency. To them, the system itself was the problem. On the other side was the neoclassical counter-revolution, which really got popular in the 1980s with leaders like Reagan and Thatcher. They argued the exact opposite. They said the problem isn't the global system, but too much government interference and corruption within these countries. Their solution? Embrace free markets, privatize everything, and integrate even more deeply into the global economy.
Now, while that huge global debate was raging, blame the system versus blame the government, a different school of thought took a quieter, more inward-looking approach. The structural change model argued that the real key to development wasn't just about capital, but about transforming the very fabric of an economy. That essential shift, for instance, from an economy based on farming to one centered on modern industry and services. It was all about changing what a country actually makes and does.
So, okay, we've got 4 competing blueprints. A straight line, an internal transformation, a global trap, and a global opportunity. It's a lot to take in. So, which one is right?
Well, the modern answer is, maybe not surprisingly, a lot more nuanced. The decades of debate have taught us that there's no single magic bullet. The idea of one rigid blueprint that fits all countries has pretty much been left behind.
Instead, what's come out of all this is what you'd call an eclectic approach. Today's policymakers don't just choose one theory. They build a flexible toolkit, pulling insights from all of them. They recognize that, yeah, saving and investment are crucial, but so are those internal structural changes, and so is a country's relationship with the global economy.
So, what are the big takeaways from all this? First, just remember that development is about way more than just money. It's about human freedom. Second, there is no one-size-fits-all path to prosperity, period. And finally, while these classic theories might seem old, they aren't obsolete. They form the essential toolkit we still use to understand and tackle one of humanity's greatest challenges.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If you had to create a development strategy for a country today, which pieces from this toolkit would you prioritize? The focus on investment? The need for structural change? Or would you focus on fixing or embracing the global system? The answer, as you can probably guess, is anything but simple.